Welcome to the Driven Agenda podcast, where raw journeys drive ambition and reveal the fuel behind people's success. I'm Shannon Sagan, a personal injury lawyer, entrepreneur, and founder of the Dashcam Lawyer. This podcast is all about being driven, focused, motivated, and determined to reach your goals and setting an agenda that pushes you forward. We bring you insights from top players in business, sports, real estate, investing, health, and more. Here, we dive into what it really takes to thrive with candid conversations that cut through the noise and get to the heart of people's success. All right, welcome to the Driven Agenda podcast. And my next guests are Joy, aka Mom, and Gloria McAllister, aka my top paralegal. But we're not here really to talk about law because we all know law is boring, and that's why I have this podcast, interviews about everything other than law. We might do that down the road. There'll be some aspects of law that we're going to talk about, but I want to talk about leadership because with both of your history, you guys have an extensive amount of leadership and have been very successful as leaders in not only this career that you're in, but your former careers. So anyway, as far as Joy is concerned, she was in real estate for probably over 4 decades.
40 years, 42 years.
Moved up the ladder, but ironically never sold homes. She was always a manager or a manager's manager. And Gloria, interesting how I found her. We were co-members in leadership, Belle Glade. And out of nowhere, I get this random email from her saying, we used to go to law school. I wanted to be a lawyer many years ago. And now I want to work at a law firm. And I was like, what a weird email to get. And I kind of blew her off for a couple of weeks because I'm like, is she really serious? And thought about it. We had a couple emails back and forth, picked her up. And boy, did I waste my time, not hiring her even weeks sooner. She really has been the best paralegal that I've ever had. In many ways, best team member. And so we'll get into all of that. But briefly, Joy, when did your real estate career start and how?
1980. We had moved from Florida with 2 small children. And I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. And financially, with our business, I realized I had to go back to work. And when I looked at realtors, it appeared that I could work my job around my children. So I got in. So I did sell for a little bit. I realized early on that wasn't what I was going to be successful at. I wanted something steady. So sold for a few years and co-managed, managed the office for 2 guys. And probably 10 years in, got a call from someone asking if I ever thought about being a manager and if I ever thought about leaving these 2 guys that were good to me. And I thought, I think I would like to do that, have a permanent job, vacation, benefits. So I switched over to management, did that for several years. I was known as the girl who could bring an office that was in the hole, successful. I enjoyed that challenge. I came to a company in 2006, and I oversaw their family of services, mortgage, title, and insurance, and we were successful of that, and I enjoyed that. So I like the real estate career. I think I get bored, and I needed just changes. I was fortunate enough that the president of the Kai's company asked me to oversee Illustrated Properties when we purchased them. Oh my goodness, I think 2016, and I went over there and found that I enjoyed the leadership. Since I had sold for a few years, I did have knowledge for associates when they came on board to tell them how I felt you could be successful.
And Gloria, give us a general overview of kind of your careers.
Okay. Most of my career I consider myself an educator. It's always been the draw for my life. And from the time I was 4, playing school at home, that was really all that drove me forward. But law had always been in the back of my mind from about age 12 up. And I had the opportunity when I was living in Nashville to, Nashville has the oldest evening law school in the country. And so you could go to law school full time at night, and you paid on a month-to-month basis. So you didn't run out your finances all at one time. So I was able to teach during the day, work with blind and visually handicapped children, and then to go to law school at night. But my friends were smart enough to say to me, Gloria, you always talk about teaching, but you never talk about law. What is it that you want to do? And definitely education is where I needed to be. So I went back to get my doctorate at the University of Texas at Austin, and became a teacher trainer, and moved up from there into monitoring school districts for compliance with special ed law in New York State. So my law background very much helped me with that job and helped me to understand the laws. And a lot of what you need is, you know what the law is. Now you need to know how are the options to comply with the law, but still work as fluidly around it as you can. So I felt like I was a real asset to my school districts. I had over 103 school districts and 54 private schools that I monitored, along with helping out in other aspects. And from there, one of my school districts had a lawsuit filed against it for special ed noncompliance. And they pulled me out of state ed to help them with that situation. So it took us 9 years, but we got out of court. And so that was a really good thing. I continued to become then an elementary principal, eventually a secondary principal, and have taught at the college level all of my career because, again, my field of visual impairment and blindness, there's not a lot of people at the doctoral level in that field. And so I've had that opportunity. And when I came to Florida to help start charter schools, I was involved in emergency management also. So that's still one of my loves. And I do teach now for Nova Southeastern University in emergency management and disaster response. And so I think education is a gift that we give ourselves, and that you can continue to grow and learn every day of your life. And if you don't, it's really on you. It's your responsibility. And I love what education brings to me. And I love the challenges that each of my leadership roles has brought to me to allow me to continue to grow while being an asset to others.
Awesome. So, Joy, I know you did sell some homes in the beginning, but what is it that made you want to work in a field where people, the way they make money is selling homes, but you're going to just manage them instead? And then how do you earn those people's respect if you're not selling homes?
What I found was a lot of people around me, didn't take their job seriously. And no matter what job I've had since, I was babysitting at the age of 10, I always took it responsibly and always made sure I did a great job. So when I saw realtors around me not doing their great job, not taking the contract seriously, I started helping them out. That's how I got to be more or less an assistant manager in the office. So I would do some training with brand new people that were coming on board of how I had learned and what the right thing was to do. What I felt my entire life was that empathy is probably the best quality we could have as far as working with people. When you're working with buyers and sellers and you think they're getting upset with you because you're not doing your job, I realized it had nothing to do with me personally. It meant something was going on at their home behind closed doors, divorce, death, can't afford the payments, you name it. So I learned that right on, and I constantly in 42 years, that's what I taught new associates, was to have empathy for people, not to lose their confidence, that it was basically the buyers and the sellers who were having an issue. It was not about the associate personally. And then I'm a constant reader, constant learning. I have a library at home filled with, I read 2 books a week now, one for fun and one for self-improvement. But I found every book I could find on teaching people leadership, how to treat people in sales, constantly trying to grow. And then I looked at people around me that I thought were successful. And sometimes I would ask them to mentor me or sit with me and go over some stuff with me. I learned from the best.
Plus, back in the day, there was no Google and YouTube and things for
There
you.
were
to
no
Cell phone.
computers.
Yeah.
There were no computers.
No cell phones. Now, I want to follow up on something Joy said
Sure.
about empathy. I find that to be one of the traits that I appreciate most in myself and in other people is having empathy. And with the dialogue, some of the dialogue going on in our country right now is about that empathy is a weakness. And I see empathy as a number one strength. You have to, we talk about caring about people and being treated the way we want to be treated. And if you're not treating your employees or the people that you work with the way you would like to be treated, I think there's something wrong with the organization. And I think that we always have to look at that empathetic piece and be aware of it in our lives and in how we're approaching other people.
And my parents were at a disadvantage. Both my parents had polio at the age of 2 and went through a stressful life. And I watched sometimes how they were treated, which was very poorly. They were brilliant people, but people didn't look at them that way. My parents never complained about anything, their situation, their handicap, anything. So I learned the empathy from them because they were kind to everyone. They didn't judge anybody. They just took people as they came and were pleasant to them. So that's where I think I learned it, and I learned that it can make you successful if you just listen to people and let them think that and know that you care for them.
Gloria, what would you consider to be your top 3 roles in all of your careers you've had leadership-wise?
Probably one that's right up there at the top is teacher trainer or university professor. I've done that for most of my career, and I'm still teaching online courses in emergency management. So I find that educator role in me has still been able to exist parallel to other aspects of my life. So I'm always a teacher first. I think that's number one. One of the jobs looking back on my career that I wish I had stayed with was with the state ed department in New York, because it was very interesting work and very powerful. So you had to know how to balance the power that you were holding in your hands and looking at the millions and millions of dollars that you were potentially doling out to the school districts and allowing them to provide the services that were needed. So it was a very powerful position, and I don't think you can let that go to your head. But I was very well respected by my districts. They, instead of saying, watch out, state ed's coming in, they're going to get you, it was like, oh, Gloria's coming, we'll be fine. So I appreciate that from other people. And then I've also been able to pursue other interests that I have as far as not just teaching or, I'm working as a school administrator, because I have worked as a principal at different levels. And in a district office I've worked in the classroom, a lot of different things. I am able to pursue my avocations in music. And I really appreciate the opportunity to express that gift that I think I have.
Joy, there were times where when you were managing offices, various competitors would come and steal you so you could run other offices. But then there was a time where you end up being a manager of the managers. So why did you decide to take on that role of basically taking on hundreds of managing positions and overseeing them versus just having a nice, office that's very successful and having a nice, comfortable job?
I didn't choose to oversee the company. I was very fortunate that the president of the company came and said to me, "This is what I would like you to do." I thought it was a challenge. I was like, I hope I can do this job to myself. But I thought that if he had that much confidence in me, and he'd been a great mentor, that I would be able to do that. And again, as most people who know me personally, I'm very hyper. My sister says I get more done in 24 hours than most people get done in 2 days. So I like the challenge. I worked very hard at it, and because of his belief in me, I thought maybe this is God's way of saying you need to change, you need to up it a little bit. And so that's why I took the position on, and I ended up loving it.
How many people did you manage in the end before you retired? How many managers were there?
There were 22 managers. I had a staff of 12. I oversaw mortgage, title, and insurance, and we had about 700 to 800 associates in that company.
In both companies?
In just the one company that I oversaw.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask both of you this. What are some of the top strategies you've used as a leader that you found worked? What are the ones that maybe you've used that probably did not work?
I think treating people the way that you would want to be treated is probably one of my number ones. I'm not the kind of manager that is dogmatic. It's not my way or the highway. And I think that I learn more by listening to what others are thinking about that, and especially my employees. If they've got ideas about how a program can run better or something can be done more efficiently or whatever, it's important to listen to their ideas rather than saying, I'm the leader, I have the answer to the question. And so, and just being dismissive of the employees. So I think that's one of the things that's helped me be really strong, is listening to others and respecting their opinions, and maybe not always agreeing with them, but at least being able to have the dialogue. But as a leader, I'm not afraid to make that final decision and live with the consequences of it. So I think that those are some powerful tools.
I found that people, if I listen to people, they liked telling me things. They like tell me about their personal life or if they were struggling. So if I saw an associate that I felt was struggling, or I had an associate one time that everybody just said was just being mean and short with everybody. So I called her in and sat and talked to her, and how's your business and this and that. And I said, is there anything I need to know? Is there anything I can help you with? And this was a very strong person, but she broke down and she was having problems at home, and we just sat and strategized. But I think listening to people, my daughter once said to me, sometimes when I call you, I don't want you to offer me advice. I just want you to listen. So that's my number one, is I do listen to people, and I'm very fortunate that I can see when they're struggling, and they're easy to they open up to me. Sometimes I wish they wouldn't, because when someone says, I have something to tell you, but it's a secret, I don't like to keep secrets. I'm very good at keeping them. It's just that I'm like, oh, I wish you hadn't told me that, So that helped me a lot, is being kind and just listening to people.
Yeah, I tend to sometimes even, for myself, if I'm in one of those darker places, I may tend to be short with other people, but I've again learned over time, you have to put that aside when you're dealing with them. They don't want to hear about your problems. They don't want to hear what's going on in your life. They want to maybe share what's going on in theirs. But my husband taught me a very valuable lesson that I try to reflect every single day, and that is to give back to others what you would want them to give back to you. So especially now in this field where you're dealing with a lot of people who are very frustrated, then if you can just step back and say, I appreciate what you're feeling, I appreciate how you're helping me, those kinds of things to validate that their jobs are important and that they're providing valuable information to me. So maybe it's not exactly what I needed, but it is kind of exactly what they needed. And I think that it's important to validate people like that.
And I think as we get older, we don't feel like we always have to be right. So you can get off the phone with someone that you know was wrong, who maybe talked down to you, but you get off and you just say, that's their problem, and I know I was right, but I have nothing to prove, and you just move on to the next person.
I think that's an age thing, because as you get older, you realize sometimes it doesn't really matter, even if you are right.
The goal is to get it. When I was in sales, the goal was to get to closing. And I would tell an associate, if they had ever worked with me when I was working with buyers and sellers, I said, you would love me because I probably would do your job. I needed the money at closing, so I didn't care whose job it was. It wasn't my point to say, oh, Shannon, you should be doing that. I would just do it because at the end I got paid, and that's what I was there for.
That's right. Yeah, that's important. And there are a lot of things along those lines that make it important and make it successful on your end when you don't have to be right all the time. I think especially for young people, they right fight. And I'm right, you're wrong. And with age, you learn it really doesn't matter. I don't correct people anymore very often. It's just not important. If they're misinformed, that's not my issue.
There's many times where you can be proven you're right, but it doesn't mean that you need to fight about it if it's overall not an actual reason to be right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So obviously we're talking about law here. We have to be right with certain things, and there we can have an argument about who's right or who's wrong, but that's an important decision for that. But there's other things that go on where people just, even if they're right, you don't need to fight over it because it's kind of silly and it's not important.
And one of the things I learned in a D.L. Carnegie class, 40, 50 years ago, that if there was something bad I had to deliver, to deliver it right away to someone or a contract or something had gone wrong, rather than holding it off and each day hoping it'll get better. What happened was it tormented me, and I was having horrible days waiting for that final thing. I learned through this class is first thing in the morning, if I had to let someone go or I had to talk to someone seriously, go in, get it over with, and then the rest of the day rolls on. And half the time, the problem wasn't as serious as I had built up in my mind by waiting to tell someone.
Yeah, we're good at what one of my friends used to call cornmealing things to death. So take a piece of corn and you grind it and you grind it and you grind it day after day, and all it does is upset you and doesn't feed anybody with the corn that you're churning there. So it's important, I think, to be upfront with people and to be still empathetic when you deliver the message.
And something you said earlier, working as a team, I found that, and I learned, I think, as I got mentored more and I got older, I would meet with my team. I would take input from my staff. In the end, I knew I would take the most success from there, but I wanted them to think when the project was done that success was because they gave me their input.
Right.
Even if you're not going to use their input, listening to them and saying that's a great idea and let me think about that. In the end, everyone likes it when they've worked towards a common goal and don't think that you're just making all the decisions.
Right. And I think a good leader, you keep that open door and let people come to you with their ideas. It doesn't mean that you have to validate every single thing that they say or do what they ask you to do, but you certainly can listen to that and be respectful of the fact that they're coming forward in what might be a very difficult conversation to come because they trust you enough to come to you and talk to you about the situation.
Let's talk about technology. I know you're pretty savvy with it.
Pretty much. I didn't start out that way.
Did your careers require you to keep up with it? Was it also a combination of you wanting to learn?
It's a combination, but in my doctoral program, because it was a Ph.D., there was a language requirement. And even though I was fluent in French, we were all encouraged to to take computer language as our second language. And this was at a time where we didn't have any computers in the office. We eventually, in one office for the entire Department of Special Ed at the university, we had one Apple IIc computer. And then that got upgraded to a 2E. So we really thought we had come up in the world. I actually started my dissertation on 12-inch floppy disks that were too big to fit in a briefcase. But that's what technology was. Once I got tuned into it, I loved it. I just could see how it could streamline things for my life. And so now it's like, tell me more. I want to learn more. I want to do more. And I'm able to do a lot of troubleshooting for other people because I don't give up. I'm not afraid to hit that key that might take the whole system down. It's like, oh, well, I guess we'll bring it back up again. But I am a huge risk taker. And I think that's a part of, all my life, but also it helps with the technology, because if you're afraid of technology, you're in trouble in this day and age.
That would be Joy a little bit. But her strengths are the personalization, the talking, the making sure everybody is heard, the cakes, all those things. I call it the old school type stuff. Which is why she rose to the top in her companies. So we know her technology is not the greatest.
It isn't the greatest.
But we all have our strengths and our weaknesses.
My strength is I have Gloria.
But she asks for help. Yeah. She doesn't just ignore the task because she doesn't know how to complete it. She goes and finds the answer.
But I never hired her for technology either,
right.
knowing that, because she had help at the other job. She had an executive assistant. So that she could focus on her strengths. So that's the difference in leaders, is they all have their strengths and they have to use each one to their advantage. And
I also learned through Dale Carnegie classes years ago, learned to delegate, which I'm not a delegator. I like to do it all, so when it ends up, I know it's the way I wanted it. And I learned to delegate. I still got the credit for things that happened, but it made my life a lot easier.
Yeah.
And even here in the office, you know who to delegate things to or ask for help.
Right. And sometimes people think when you work with other leaders that you can't lead. And yet I think certainly here in this office, we've all found our niche. And nobody steps on anybody's toes, and nobody's offended if somebody gets something done or admits I didn't get it done, whatever. I mean, there's a freedom in that, and being able to say, I'm really struggling with this. I don't have it done for you, or whatever, but it's not a reflection on us as individuals. It's the task itself. But I think that when you have strong leaders, it's hard for sometimes to get the consensus in the group. And I think we're very fortunate here in that we don't struggle with that, and we don't take offense if someone else steps forward.
No. Well, two things I wanted to mention. One was in our office, I make a point for people to tell me they have to come to me if they're having a problem or questions. If you start hiding things, thinking questions are stupid, you don't want to look silly or think you'll get in trouble, you actually will get in trouble when I find out that you've been holding it back or trying to go around me. So open communication has to happen here, or you could potentially be on the chopping block. But it also got to my other question I wanted to ask is, what is one or two of the major things you each would see from other leaders or managers in your industry where maybe they got fired? What was it that they were doing wrong?
One thing I feel is in any industry, sometimes people become complacent in their job. Instead of, till the day I retired, I worked hard every single day at my job. I didn't sit back and say, oh, well, I only have I gave them I told a year ahead of time that I wanted to retire, and it took that long for us to find someone to replace my position. But I still worked as hard as I can. I don't like it when people kind of sit back in the position they've been maybe 20 years as a manager or a leader. that does bother me, because you should be working at your job. As long as you're taking a salary from someone, as long as you're helping in a business, you need to give it your all, not sit back and just say, well, I paid my dues, let me just collect the check.
Yeah, I think that's an important fact, and I think that's one of the reasons we're facing such turmoil in government right now, is that there's a perception, which may not and probably is not accurate, that a lot of people are sitting at jobs not doing much of anything there. And here, Joy will tell you I seldom leave my chair, but it's not because I don't want to go somewhere else or do something else. It's because I'm really motivated by the work. And so I sit there and do that.
There is the argument, though, that the younger generation is not as motivated, as dedicated.
No,
as
they don't
hardworking.
seem to be.
I think everyone tends to agree with that, and there might be some young people who disagree. I would imagine they would be the ones that are hardworking, but I've seen more and more younger generation people want to become entrepreneurs and want to own their own business and want to be rich and famous, but they're still living in their parents' home, which is nothing wrong with it, but you see how you can't accomplish those things if you're not out there trying to get it, trying to figure things out.
I see that in customer service. When I'm in stores and they're young people, don't say hello, thank you, just
look at you.
Yeah, watching
you
their
in the
phone.
eye.
It just amazes me, and that's disappointing. And maybe my parents' generation felt the same thing about, when I was growing up, that we weren't as respectful. But there are some companies, food companies, that I always rave about, where you go in, the young people say hello and this and that. And I said the owner of that business has taught them, there are 50 other people waiting for your job at the door if you don't do it right.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A, they've got that brand down. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to serve you. Yeah. And you hear that from every one of their employees there. I think, advice that I would give, or where I see a weakness in leaders and people who want to move up in the world, I believe you have to at some point be a risk taker. You can't just sit back and let the world pass you by. If you want to go to New York City for vacation, then make it happen. Don't just sit around saying, oh, gee, I wish I could go to New York, or I wish I could go to, Antarctica. If that's what you want to do it. Make it happen.
Yeah, put it on a vision board, say it to yourself,
What am I
start
going to do to
saving.
get there?
There's never going to be the right time.
Right.
So if you're waiting for the right moment, life will pass you by. And when you get to my age, I can honestly say I have no regrets. And there's nothing I would. Yes, I've had trials and tribulations along the way but I'm not. I don't dwell on those things. I'm an optimist. I move forward always. I'm always moving forward. My glass is always half full. It's never half empty. And, and my mother used to say, I don't know how you can forgive those people for the way they treat you. It's like, it's a choice you make. You either move on or you sit around being bitter and holding grudges against people. And I do not have time for that in my life.
And they say when you forgive someone else, it's not a matter of them. It's you've taken that pressure off of you yourself. Struggling.
Where does it come from when you have problems here, issues, you don't have answers to certain cases we're working on, and you go out and find them? She always gets the answer somehow. There's stuff that she's done that I've never done before. What is that? Because there are people who will go to a certain point and then just say they don't have an answer or you can't find it. But I noticed with you take things to the next, like with a certain case we're working on, we can't find our client right now. And I was ready to give up and just file something with the courthouse. And then randomly she sends me an email saying she found something else. So what is it? Well, is that the leadership personality in you?
It is, but it's also, I pretty much see life as a game. And I want
curiosity.
I want to play the game. And so if you put a challenge in my path, that's like, all right, this is candy now. I'm going to go for it. So that's something that really drives me forward, to give me something that's unsolvable, and I will find the solution somewhere along the way.
It's true.
The workaround.
And Joy, a few of you out there that don't know, she makes this pistachio cake, and she's made it for me for years. So we haven't, my sister and all of us never really appreciated it that much because we had seen it all the time. But about 8 years ago, I started having her give them to referral sources for holidays, just as an extra touch. And it started with like 6 or 7, and then the next year word of mouth got out, and then it started increasing. And then this past Christmas, I said, "Do you think you can do 28?" "Sure, no problem." She never says no. So over a period of a few weeks, and this was after she had already planned our grand opening where we moved in the new office. Then she went straight to making 28 cakes, and now we've had such high demand. I get more texts from these cakes than I do anything that any kind of thank you for my referral sources, family, friends. Then now we're just doing a monthly, just kind of surprising people. So things like that, where I was teasing about her and technology. It doesn't matter. I don't give a shit about her lack of technology, because something as little as a cake that I've taken advantage of for years and haven't appreciated is now one of our biggest kind of marketing things that we do, and people are eager to look for. So you see the differences in these two ladies, and you see the similarities, but I think the common theme here is empathy and listening to your team members and the people, not necessarily below you, but the people who you're responsible for. And I can say that I try to do that as good of a job as I can, but I forget all the time. I'm buried in worrying about finances, worrying about bringing in cases, worrying about practicing law. But I have spent years doing coaching and spending some time making sure I focus on the team and reducing turnover as much as possible, because you get caught up in it, and it's not like you don't care. At least for me, it's not like I don't care about anyone that's ever worked for me, but I remember that there's times where maybe I hadn't done lunch with them in forever, and I never sat down and talked to them about their lives and get to know them. And it wasn't for lack of interest. It was just busy. But now I've changed it around. I have so many more things I could be doing better. But we have our morning meetings. We have our Tuesday meeting, which is really in-depth and personal. We're doing multiple lunches a month in and out of the office, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. So trying to do that. And as a leader, those are the things that people should be doing. You need to be in tune with your team. You need to be aware of when they're having problems, whether it's professionally or personally. And you can't just crack the whip, because that doesn't necessarily work. And I can tell you, I've kept more employees, even though I'm a small firm and I pay less than a lot of the bigger than all the bigger firms. But I provide more personal benefits, empathy type benefits, appreciation type benefits, more vacation days, things like that. And that's what keeps us from having at least a lower turnover in our industry, because law is extremely boring and it's extremely brutal, especially some of these lawyers and bosses can be really tough. So it's always in the back of my mind that I have to make sure to take care of my team for many, many obvious reasons. And a lot of the things that I've learned are from these ladies here who have each managed thousands of people in their lives and have done that role, been there, done it, and pretty much seen it all.
Can I just say one last thing?
Sure.
Simon Cowell, in an interview one time, said that when he was young, his dad said that everyone has a little note on their forehead that says, "Make me feel important." And Simon Cowell said he made it look like he's tough in business, but he does care for people and listens and is empathetic. And I took that also. I'm like, everybody wants to feel important no matter what their job is or no matter what they do. And one of the things that Shannon does is every Friday he sends a weekly highlights, and he highlights everyone in our team, technology, you name it. We have a lot of outside people that are helping us. And I was commenting to his wife a few weeks ago that it's so encouraging when I see that on Fridays, even if I haven't worked that hard, I think I've worked that hard, that he's found something that each one of us has done. And she kind of looked at me and she goes, he does that? I said, yeah, he does. And I felt bad because I'm like, I'm surprised he hasn't shared that with her, that, this is what I'm trying to do. But that's leadership to me. The fact that every week you find something important to thank us for. So,
well, a lot of that has to do with taking coaching, and the Atticus, the Crisps, the coaches that I had and currently have. Wasn't doing that until 2018. So that's an important aspect that they teach you. And again, I'm not perfect, but I'm still learning and trying to perfect that. So, but anyway, I appreciate your time. And this was fun, and I've been wanting to do this for a while. And Joy had all these notes, thinking we were going to talk about law. Like, she said she watched my podcast, but if she did in the past, she would know I say all the time, we're not talking about law. It's boring. People don't like law. Maybe we will down the road, but for now, I have too many more interesting people than lawyers. She tells me last night she's got all these notes written down about how I do this and how we do this. And I'm like, we're not talking about that. And I don't tell anyone the questions. No one before you guys knows what I'm going to talk about. I want it to be off the cuff like it is here. So if anyone has questions for these ladies who 40 years of running real estate companies and managing people who are now in her role, and who will tell you, dozens of people will tell you that she was their mentor. Same with Gloria. She's got, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people she's managed. And me, I haven't had as many as they have, but I spend a lot of time and a lot of money learning how to be the best leader that I can. And I know I have a long way to go, but I also see that I've come a long way. So if anyone has questions about leadership, we all are available to you to give you what we've learned, especially as we get older, the more we learn. Anyway, thank you, ladies, for your time, and it's been fun.
Yes. It was fun. I can throw my notes away now.
Yeah, there you go.